My billionaire CEO ex-husband had an accident. The doctor he thanked later was our secret daughter. You kept my daughter from me for 25 years. Lena's voice cut through the hospital room like shattered glass. Your daughter. You want to claim her now, Wesley. You called children a distraction from your empire. You said they would ruin everything you built. I would have changed. Would you? Because the man I divorced cared more about stock prices than his own wife, crying herself to sleep every night. You never even noticed when I stopped wearing my ring. Wesley Royce stared at the woman who once held his heart. The words burned because every single one of them was true. 3 days ago, he was untouchable, a billionaire who bent the world to his will. Now he lay broken in a hospital bed, staring at the face of the daughter he never knew existed. The same daughter whose steady hands had pulled him back from death. If you want to know how a man who had everything lost the only thing that mattered, stay with me until the end. 3 days earlier, the snow was falling in sheets across the mountain highway when Wesley Royce's private car lost control. The driver tried to correct, but the ice had other plans. The vehicle spun twice before slamming into the guardrail with enough force to crumple the reinforced frame like aluminum foil. Wesley remembered fragments. The explosion of the airbag against his chest. The sickening crunch of metal folding around him. The taste of blood flooding his mouth. And then silence. A terrible, consuming silence that wrapped around him like a burial shroud. He was 53 years old. He had built Royce Technologies from a garage startup into a global empire worth $14 billion. He had dined with presidents, negotiated with kings, and crushed competitors without losing a single night of sleep. But in that moment, pinned beneath twisted steel with his life draining onto the frozen asphalt, Wesley Royce was nothing more than a dying man. The paramedics worked for 40 minutes to extract him from the wreckage. By the time the helicopter touched down at Mercy General Hospital, his heart had stopped twice. The trauma team was waiting on the rooftop. Nurses and technicians swarmed the stretcher, their voices sharp with urgency. But one voice rose above the chaos. A woman's voice, deep and commanding, cutting through the panic with surgical precision. I need him in or 3 now. Someone get me 4 units of O-negative and prep for an exploratory laparotomy. Move. Wesley caught a glimpse of her through the haze of pain and medication. Dark skin, sharp cheekbones, eyes that held the calm of someone who had stared down death before and won. Then the anesthesia pulled him under, and the world dissolved into nothing. He woke up 3 days later. The hospital room was private. Expensive. The kind of room his assistants would have arranged without being asked. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm, and 4 dripped clear fluid into his arm. Sunlight filtered through half-closed blinds, painting golden stripes across the sterile white sheets. Wesley tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain exploded through his midsection, stealing his breath. He collapsed back against the pillows, gasping. A nurse appeared at his bedside within seconds. Mr. Royce, please try to remain still. You have extensive internal injuries. The surgery was successful, but your body needs time to heal. Surgery. Wesley's mind was still foggy, but the word anchored him. Someone had operated on him. Someone had saved his life. Who? His voice came out as a croak. Who was the surgeon? The nurse smiled. Dr. Hayes. She is one of our best. You were very lucky she was on call that night. I want to meet her. Wesley's hand closed around the nurse's wrist with surprising strength. Now, sir, Dr. Hayes is currently in surgery with another patient. I can arrange for her to visit once she is available. Wesley released the nurse's arm and leaned back, frustration burning in his chest. He was not a man who waited. He was a man who made demands and watched the world scramble to meet them. But here, in this bed, he was powerless. The realization sat in his stomach like a stone. It was nearly evening when the door finally opened. Wesley had spent the hours reviewing reports on his tablet, answering emails, and barking orders at his assistant through video calls. Work was the only thing that kept the fear at bay. The fear of how close he had come to dying. The fear of how empty his life would have been if he had. The woman who entered was not what he expected. She was young, mid-20s at most. Her white coat was crisp, her stethoscope draped casually around her neck. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her posture radiated quiet authority. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had no time to waste. But it was her face that stopped Wesley's heart. The bone structure was severe and elegant. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her lips, the way she tilted her head slightly when she assessed him. He knew that face. He had loved that face once, a lifetime ago. Mr. Royce. The woman's voice was cool and professional. I am Dr. Camille Hayes. I performed your surgery 3 nights ago. How are you feeling? Wesley could not answer. His mouth had gone dry. His mind was racing, calculating, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. She stepped closer, checking the monitors beside his bed. Her movements were precise, clinical. She adjusted her surgical mask, pulling it down to rest beneath her chin, and that was when Wesley saw it. A small, faint scar tracing the curve of her jaw, thin as a thread, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Wesley knew where to look. That scar. His voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Hayes glanced at him, her expression unchanged. Excuse me, that scar on your jaw. Where did you get it? For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. A flash of surprise, quickly suppressed. It is a birthmark. A family trait, apparently. Not that it is any of your concern. She turned back to the monitors, her shoulders stiffening almost imperceptibly. But Wesley could not look away. The scar was identical to the one his father had carried. The one his grandfather had carried before him. A genetic quirk that ran through the Royce bloodline like a signature. How old are you? Wesley's voice was stronger now, edged with something that sounded almost like desperation. Dr. Hayes turned to face him fully. Her amber eyes that were exactly the same shade as his own, held a cold and distant light. I am 25, Mr. Royce. And while I appreciate your curiosity, I have other patients to attend to. If you need anything, please contact the nursing staff. She moved toward the door, but Wesley's voice stopped her. Your mother. What is her name? Dr. Hayes froze. Her hand rested on the door handle, her back rigid. For a long moment, she did not move. When she spoke, her voice was ice. That is not a question I answer for patients, Mr. Royce. Good evening. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Wesley stared at the empty doorway, his chest heaving. The math was instantaneous. 25 years old. The exact shade of his eyes. His family's mark scarred into her jaw. And a face that was the mirror image of the only woman he had ever truly loved. Lena Hayes. His ex-wife. The woman he had destroyed with his ambition and arrogance. The woman who had vanished from his life 26 years ago, taking nothing with her except her dignity and her silence. She had been pregnant. She must have been pregnant when she left. And she had never told him. Wesley pressed his hand against his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath his palm. For the first time in decades, tears burned in his eyes. The doctor who saved his life was his daughter. And she had no idea. If this story is already gripping your heart, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Wesley did not sleep that night. He lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, his mind churning through decades of memories. Every fight with Lena, every cold silence, every time he had chosen his company over her, every time she had reached for him and he had pulled away. He remembered the last night they were together. She had been crying, her beautiful face streaked with tears, begging him to see her, to really see her. And he had turned away because there was a board meeting in the morning. There was always something more important than her. When he woke the next day, she was gone. The closet was half empty. Her jewelry was still on the dresser. She had taken nothing except the clothes on her back and the car he had given her as a wedding gift. He had searched for her. Briefly, his lawyers had traced her to a small town in Georgia, but by then, Wesley's pride had curdled into resentment. If she wanted to leave, let her leave. He would not chase a woman who did not want to be found. He had signed the divorce papers without reading them. He had thrown himself into his work with renewed fury. He had told himself that he was better off alone. For 25 years, he had believed that lie. Now, lying in a hospital bed with his body broken and his heart in pieces, Wesley finally understood the truth. Lena had not run away from their marriage. She had run away to protect their child from him. And she had been right to do it. Morning came slowly. Wesley was on the phone before the sun fully rose. His personal assistant, a severe woman named Margaret who had worked for him for 15 years, answered on the second ring. Margaret, I need everything you can find on Dr. Camille Hayes. She is a surgeon at Mercy General. I want her employment records, her medical school transcripts, her home address, her social media accounts, everything. And I need it within the hour. There was a brief pause. Mr. Royce, may I ask what this is regarding? No, you may not. Just get me the information. He ended the call and immediately dialed his head of legal. Richard, I need you at the hospital immediately. Bring the contracts for the Hayes Foundation initiative, the one we shelved last year. Sir, That project was estimated at $40 million. I am aware of the cost. Bring the contracts. Wesley ended the call and leaned back against his pillows, his jaw tight. He knew what he was doing. He was doing what he always did. He was throwing money and power at a problem, trying to control an outcome that terrified him. But what else could he do? He did not know how to be vulnerable. He did not know how to ask for things he could not buy. He only knew how to demand, to acquire, to conquer. Surely, if he offered enough, Camille would listen. If he showed her what he could provide, she would understand that he wanted to be part of her life. Surely, Dr. Camille Hayes did not return that morning. Instead, a different doctor came to check on Wesley's recovery. A middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle manner who seemed utterly unaware of the turmoil raging inside his patient. Wesley answered the doctor's questions with monosyllables, his attention fixed on the door. Every time it opened, his heart lurched. Every time it was not Camille, his frustration grew. By noon, Margaret had delivered the information he requested. Wesley scrolled through the files on his tablet, his expression growing more complicated with every page. Camille Hayes, born in Savannah, Georgia, raised by her mother, Lena Marie Hayes. No father listed on the birth certificate. Graduated from public school with honors. Full scholarship to Howard University for her undergraduate degree. Medical degree from Johns Hopkins, where she graduated top of her class. Surgical residency at Massachusetts General before accepting a position at Mercy General 2 years ago. She was brilliant. She was accomplished. She had built her life from nothing, without a dollar of his money or a moment of his support. And she had done it all while carrying his blood in her veins. Wesley set the tablet down, his throat tight. He had missed everything. Her first steps, her first words, her graduations, her triumphs and heartbreaks. 25 years of a life he should have been part of, erased because he had been too arrogant to see what mattered. He picked up his phone and dialed the nursing station. I want to see Dr. Hayes. Now, tell her it is urgent. The nurse hesitated. Mr. Royce, Dr. Hayes is very busy today. Perhaps I could arrange for another physician to address your concerns. I do not want another physician. I want Dr. Hayes. This is not a medical matter. It is personal. There was a long pause. I will pass along the message, sir. An hour later, the door opened. But it was not Camille who walked through. It was Richard, his head of legal, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the expression of a man who had been summoned from bed on a Sunday morning. Mr. Royce, I have the contracts you requested. Although I must say, the timing is rather unusual. Wesley waved his hand dismissively. Set them on the table. I want a full breakdown of how we can expedite the foundation's funding. I want a press release drafted within the week. And I want a meeting arranged with Dr. Hayes as soon as possible. Richard raised an eyebrow. Dr. Hayes, the surgeon who operated on you. Yes. May I ask why? Wesley's jaw tightened. Because I intend to make her an offer she cannot refuse. The offer arrived on Camille's desk the following afternoon. She was between surgeries, reviewing patient charts in her cramped office, when her assistant knocked on the door. Dr. Hayes, this was just delivered for you. The messenger said it was urgent. Camille took the envelope, frowning at the weight of it. The paper was thick and expensive, embossed with a logo she recognized immediately. Royce Technologies. She opened the envelope slowly, pulling out a stack of documents that made her blood run cold. A job offer. Director of Surgical Innovation at a new research facility being built in her name. Salary of $2 million annually. Full funding for any research project she chose to pursue. And a personal note, handwritten on cream-colored stationery. Dr. Hayes, you saved my life. Allow me to return the favor. Meet with me so that we can discuss your future. Wesley Royce. Camille stared at the note for a long moment. Her hands were steady because they were always steady. She had trained herself to remain calm in the face of chaos. But inside, a storm was building. She knew who Wesley Royce was. Everyone knew who Wesley Royce was. He was one of the most powerful men in America. His face was on magazine covers. His name was synonymous with wealth and ruthlessness. But to Camille, he was something else entirely. He was the man her mother never spoke about. The ghost in the closet of her childhood. The reason Lena Hayes worked 3 jobs to put food on the table. The reason Camille had grown up without a father. He was the man she had spent her entire life hating. And now he wanted to buy her. Camille picked up the documents and walked calmly to the shredder in the corner of her office. One by one, she fed the pages into the machine, watching them dissolve into confetti. Then she returned to her desk and continued reviewing her charts. Wesley received word of Camille's response that evening. She shredded the entire package. Richard's voice was carefully neutral over the phone. The messenger said she did not even read past the first page. Wesley was silent for a long moment. His hand gripped the phone so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Send another offer. Double the salary. Add a signing bonus. Mr. Royce, with respect, I do not think money is the issue here. Then what is the issue? Richard paused. I think the issue, sir, is you. The line went dead. Wesley sat in the darkness of his hospital room, staring at the phone in his hand. For the first time in his adult life, he had no idea what to do. He had built an empire by understanding leverage, by knowing what people wanted and using that knowledge to bend them to his will. But Camille did not want his money. She did not want his connections. She did not want anything he had to offer. She wanted him to disappear. And for the first time, Wesley understood that there were some things his billions could not buy. The call came at 11 that night. Wesley was still awake, still staring at the ceiling, still trying to formulate a plan that did not involve throwing money at the problem. His phone buzzed on the bedside table, and he grabbed it without looking at the screen. Hello. The voice on the other end was one he had not heard in 26 years. But he recognized it instantly, the way you recognize the melody of a song you thought you had forgotten. Wesley. It was Lena. I understand you have been harassing my daughter. His breath caught. Lena. Do not. Her voice was sharp. Do not say my name like that. Like you have any right to it. I was not harassing her. I was trying to. Trying to what? Buy her. The way you tried to buy me. That is not fair. Fair. Lena's laugh was bitter. You want to talk about fair? Fair is raising a child alone while you built your empire. Fair is working double shifts so she could have books and clothes and a chance at a future. Fair is explaining to a 6-year-old why her father does not call on her birthday. Wesley closed his eyes. The pain in his chest had nothing to do with his injuries. I did not know. His voice was barely a whisper. Lena, I swear to you, I did not know. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. When Lena spoke again, her voice was quieter, more controlled, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. You did not know because I did not want you to know. Because the man I married would have destroyed her the way he destroyed me. I watched you, Wesley. I watched you prioritize everything over the people who loved you. I watched you turn cold and calculating and cruel. And I decided that my daughter deserved better. Our daughter. No. Lena's voice cracked like a whip. She is mine. I carried her. I raised her. I held her when she cried and celebrated when she succeeded. You have no claim to her. Wesley swallowed hard. Then why are you calling me? Another pause. When Lena spoke, her voice was tired. Because Camille came home tonight and told me that Wesley Royce, the Wesley Royce, tried to buy her with a job offer. And when I saw your name, I knew this was not going to stop. You never stop, Wesley. You never take no for an answer. That is what made you successful, and it is what made you unbearable. I have changed. Have you? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Wesley thought about all the things he could say, all the promises he could make, but the words felt hollow in his mouth. Because the truth was, he did not know if he had changed. He only knew that he wanted to change, that he needed to change, that the thought of losing this chance was more terrifying than anything he had ever faced. Tell me what to do. The words came out before he could stop them. Tell me how to make this right. Lena was silent for so long that Wesley thought she had hung up. Then, finally, she spoke. I will come to see you tomorrow. We will talk. But I am warning you, Wesley. If you try to use your money or your power to force your way into Camille's life, I will make sure you never see her again. Do you understand? Yes. Good. The line went dead. She arrived at noon the next day. Wesley had spent the morning preparing. He had ordered flowers for the room, then changed his mind and had them removed. He had rehearsed what he would say, then discarded every script as inadequate. By the time Lena walked through the door, he was a wreck of nerves and uncertainty. But she was exactly as he remembered. 26 years had changed her, of course. There were lines around her eyes now, and streaks of silver in her dark hair. But her posture was still regal. Her gaze was still fierce. She moved with the quiet dignity of a woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her and emerged stronger. She was wearing a simple blue dress and carrying a worn leather handbag. No jewelry, no makeup. She did not need any of it. She was still the most beautiful woman Wesley had ever seen. Lena. His voice cracked on her name. She stood at the foot of his bed, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. You look terrible. I was in a car accident. I know. Camille told me. Wesley searched her face for any sign of sympathy, any hint of softness. He found none. Thank you for coming. He tried to sit up straighter and winced at the pain. I am not here for you. Lena's voice was flat. I am here to protect my daughter. You need to understand something, Wesley. Camille knows who you are. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. She knows. She has always known. I never lied to her about her father. I told her your name. I told her what kind of man you were. I told her why I left. Wesley felt the blood drain from his face. And she still saved my life. Lena's lips pressed into a thin line. That is who she is. She does not let personal feelings interfere with her work. She is a professional. Unlike you. Wesley absorbed the blow without flinching. He deserved it. He deserved all of it. What did you tell her about me? The truth. Lena's eyes were hard. I told her that you were brilliant and ambitious. I told her that you could charm anyone when you wanted to. And I told her that you were incapable of love. That you saw people as tools to be used and discarded. That you valued your empire more than anything else in the world. Wesley shook his head slowly. That is not. Do not. Lena's voice rose sharply. Do not sit there and tell me I was wrong. I lived it, Wesley. I was there. I remember every broken promise. Every canceled dinner. Every time you looked through me like I was furniture. I remember crying myself to sleep while you worked until midnight. I remember begging you to go to therapy, to talk to someone, to try to be present. And I remember the look on your face when you told me that children would ruin everything you had built. Wesley flinched. I did not mean. You did mean it. That is exactly what you meant. And that is why I left. Because I was pregnant, and I knew that you would see our child as an obstacle. A distraction. Something to be managed, not loved. Tears burned in Wesley's eyes. He did not try to hide them. I was wrong. His voice was barely audible. I was wrong about everything. Lena stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she pulled a chair from the corner of the room and sat down. Her posture remained stiff, but something in her eyes had shifted. A crack in the armor, small but visible. Tell me why I should believe you. Wesley took a shaky breath. Because I almost died. Because I lay on that operating table and realized that I had nothing. No family. No real friends. Just money and power and an empire that meant nothing without someone to share it with. Because I looked into my daughter's eyes and saw everything I had thrown away. Lena listened without interrupting. Her face remained impassive, but her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. I do not expect you to forgive me. Wesley continued. I do not even expect Camille to want to know me. But I am asking for a chance. Not to buy my way in. Not to control anything. Just a chance to try. Try what exactly? Try to be better. Try to earn the right to be in her life. Even if it takes years. Even if she never fully accepts me. I just want the opportunity to try. Lena studied him for a long moment. The silence stretched between them, thick with decades of pain and regret. Finally, she spoke. You will not contact her directly. All communication goes through me. Wesley nodded quickly. Agreed. You will not send her gifts, job offers, money, or anything else. No grand gestures. No billionaire nonsense. Understood. If I allow you to see her, it will be supervised. Short visits. Neutral locations. And if you make her uncomfortable even once, it ends immediately. Whatever you need. Lena leaned forward, her eyes blazing. And you will answer every question she has. Every single one. No matter how painful. No matter how much it makes you look bad. She deserves the truth, Wesley. All of it. Wesley met her gaze without flinching. I will tell her everything. Lena sat back, her expression still guarded but slightly less hostile. I do not trust you. I want to make that clear. I am doing this because Camille deserves to make her own choice about whether to have a relationship with you. But I will be watching every step of the way. And if you hurt her, I will destroy you. I do not care how many billions you have. Wesley nodded slowly. I would expect nothing less. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past hanging between them. Then Lena stood, smoothing her dress with practiced hands. I will talk to Camille. I cannot promise anything. I know. She walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Without turning around, she spoke one last time. You have one chance, Wesley. Do not waste it. The door closed behind her, leaving Wesley alone with his thoughts and the fragile hope blooming in his chest. If you are still watching, you already know this story is just getting started. Drop a comment telling me what you think Camille will decide. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button. The real test of Wesley's redemption is coming. The first meeting was arranged for the following Saturday. Wesley had been discharged from the hospital 5 days earlier, against medical advice. He had a team of private nurses installed in his penthouse, physical therapists who came twice daily, and enough medication to stock a pharmacy. But none of it mattered as much as the text message he received from Lena that Thursday morning. Camille has agreed to meet you. Saturday, 2 p.m. The coffee shop on Maple and 5th. She will give you 30 minutes. Do not be late. Wesley read the message 17 times before responding. I will be there. The coffee shop was small and unassuming. Exposed brick walls. Mismatched furniture. The kind of place Wesley would normally never set foot in. He arrived 30 minutes early, driven by his chauffeur in a nondescript sedan instead of his usual limousine. He was wearing a simple blue sweater and gray slacks. No suit. No tie. No visible signs of wealth except for the watch on his wrist, which he realized too late he should have left at home. He chose a table in the corner, away from the windows. His hands trembled slightly as he ordered a black coffee. The pain in his abdomen was a constant companion, but he had refused to take his medication that morning. He wanted to be clear-headed. He needed to be present. Camille arrived exactly at 2. She was wearing jeans and a white blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. Without her white coat and stethoscope, she looked younger, more vulnerable, but her eyes held the same cold distance they had in the hospital. She ordered her coffee at the counter without looking at him, then walked over and sat down across the table. Her posture was rigid, her hands wrapped around her cup like a shield. Mr. Royce. Wesley swallowed hard. Please, call me Wesley. She did not respond to that, just took a sip of her coffee and waited. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Wesley's voice was rougher than he intended. I did not do it for you. Camille's tone was flat. I did it because my mother asked. And because I have questions. Ask me anything. Her eyes met his, sharp and assessing. Why did you leave? Wesley blinked. I did not leave. Your mother left me. Camille's jaw tightened. That is not what I meant. Why did you leave us? Why did you choose your company over your family? The question hit Wesley like a physical blow. He had prepared answers for 100 possible questions, but not this one. Not one that cut so directly to the heart of everything. I did not know you existed, but you knew my mother existed. Camille's voice was rising now, though she kept it controlled. You knew she was your wife. You knew she was unhappy, and you chose to ignore it. You chose your work, your money, your empire. Every single day, you made that choice. Wesley looked down at his coffee. His throat was tight. You are right. Camille fell silent, apparently surprised by his admission. I was selfish. Wesley continued, his voice low. I was so focused on building something, on proving something, that I lost sight of what actually mattered. Your mother tried to tell me. She begged me to change. But I did not listen. I thought I had all the time in the world. You had 26 years. I know. 26 years to find us. To reach out. To try. Wesley looked up, meeting her eyes. I told myself it was better this way. That your mother had made her choice, and I should respect it. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what I would find. Afraid of facing what I had done. Camille stared at him, her expression unreadable. So you just gave up? Yes. The word hung in the air between them. Camille set down her coffee cup with a soft click. You know what I remember about you, Mr. Royce? Nothing. I remember nothing. Because you were not there. I grew up watching my mother work herself to exhaustion while you built an empire. I studied in libraries because we could not afford tutors. I worked part-time jobs through medical school while you bought private jets. And now you sit here in your expensive sweater, drinking your organic coffee, telling me you were afraid. Wesley said nothing. There was nothing to say. My mother told me you were a monster. Camille's voice cracked slightly. She said you were incapable of love, that you saw people as things to be used. And I believed her because I had no evidence to the contrary. I understand. No. Camille's eyes flashed. You do not understand. Because understanding requires empathy. And empathy requires actually caring about someone other than yourself. She stood abruptly, grabbing her bag from the back of her chair. This was a mistake. Camille, please. She stopped but did not turn around. I am not asking for forgiveness. Wesley's voice was urgent. I know I do not deserve it. I am just asking for time. A chance to show you who I want to be, not who I was. Camille turned slowly. Her face was a mask of controlled emotion, but her eyes were glistening. And why should I give you that? Because I am dying. The words escaped before Wesley could stop them. They hung in the air, raw and unexpected. Camille's expression shifted. The surgeon in her emerged, clinical and assessing. What do you mean? Wesley took a shaky breath. The accident. It caused more damage than the doctors realized. There are complications. I have maybe 2 years. Maybe less. Camille stared at him, her face unreadable. Is this another manipulation? No. Wesley met her eyes without flinching. I would not lie about this. Not to you. They stood frozen in that moment, the coffee shop buzzing with oblivious life around them. Then Camille sat back down. Her movements were stiff. Her jaw was tight. But she sat. Tell me everything, she said, about the complications. And Wesley did. For the first time in his life, he opened himself completely to another person. Not with money or power or grand gestures. Just with the truth. Lena was waiting when Camille came home that night. The apartment was small but well kept. Plants lined the windowsills. Books overflowed from shelves. The walls were covered with framed photos of Camille at various ages. Graduation ceremonies. White coat presentations. Award dinners. Nowhere was there a photo of Wesley Royce. Camille dropped her keys on the counter and collapsed onto the couch next to her mother. He says he is dying. Lena's expression flickered. What? Complications from the surgery. His body is not healing properly. He has maybe 2 years. Lena was silent for a long moment. Her hands lay still in her lap, but her eyes were distant. And you believe him? Camille shrugged. I am a surgeon, Mom. I know what internal injuries can do. If what he described is accurate, then yes. I believe him. Lena closed her eyes. She looked suddenly older, more fragile. I spent 26 years protecting you from that man. And now he appears, broken and dying. And suddenly I am supposed to what? Feel sorry for him. You do not have to feel anything. Camille's voice was soft. But I need to understand. Understand what? Why you stayed as long as you did. Camille turned to face her mother. You have told me he was cold and distant. That he prioritized work over everything. But you married him, Mom. You loved him once. Help me understand who he was before he became the monster. Lena was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was distant, as if she were speaking from very far away. When I met Wesley, he was not rich. He was hungry, brilliant, passionate. He had this vision for what technology could be, and he talked about it with such fire. I fell in love with that fire. I thought I could be the one to keep it from burning everything down. What happened? Success happened. Lena's laugh was bitter. Every milestone fed his ambition. Every victory made him want more. And slowly, so slowly I did not notice at first, the fire consumed everything, including us. Did he ever love you? Lena hesitated. I believe he did, in his own limited way. But love was never his priority. Building, conquering, proving himself. That was what mattered. Camille absorbed this in silence. Why did you leave the way you did? Without telling him about me. Lena turned to face her daughter. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Because the night before I left, we had a fight. I told him I wanted to start a family, that I needed more from him. More time, more presence, more love. And he told me that children were a distraction, that they would ruin everything he had built. He said it so coldly, Camille, like he was discussing a business merger. Camille felt her throat tighten. And you were already pregnant. 3 weeks pregnant. I had been waiting for the right moment to tell him. And in that moment, I realized there would never be a right moment. He would never be ready. He would never choose us. So you ran. I protected you. There is a difference. Camille reached over and took her mother's hand. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of 25 years of love and sacrifice. He wants to try, Mom. He says he wants to change. Lena shook her head slowly. People do not change, Camille. Not fundamentally. Wesley will always be Wesley. Maybe. Camille squeezed her mother's hand. But maybe he deserves the chance to prove you wrong. Lena looked at her daughter. Really looked at her. When did you become so wise? I had a good teacher. They sat in silence for a moment, mother and daughter, surrounded by the evidence of a life built together against impossible odds. Finally, Lena spoke. What do you want to do? Camille considered the question carefully. I want to give him supervised access. Short visits. No pressure. If he is really dying, then I want to know who he is before it is too late. Not for him. For me. Lena nodded slowly. Then we will do it together. The visits continued weekly for a month. Wesley showed up exactly on time, every time. He dressed simply. He asked questions about Camille's work. He listened more than he spoke. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ice between them began to thaw. But Wesley knew that words were not enough. He needed to prove himself with actions. Not grand gestures that screamed of his wealth, but quiet support that demonstrated he understood what Camille actually needed. It started with a conversation he overheard. They were at the coffee shop again. their usual corner table, when Camille's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and sighed. I have to take this. Excuse me. She stepped outside, but Wesley could see her through the window. Her expression grew increasingly frustrated. Her hands gestured sharply. By the time she came back inside, her jaw was tight with anger. Is everything all right? Camille dropped into her chair. Fine. Just hospital politics. Wesley waited. There is a research project, Camille finally said. Innovative surgical techniques that could save lives. But the hospital board cut the funding. They say it is not a priority. What kind of research? Minimally invasive procedures for trauma patients. Faster recovery times. Lower mortality rates. It is important work. But without funding, it dies. Wesley nodded slowly, saying nothing. That night, he made a phone call. 2 weeks later, Camille received an email. Dear Dr. Hayes, the Hayes Family Foundation is pleased to inform you that your research proposal has been fully funded through an anonymous donation. A state-of-the-art surgical research laboratory will be constructed at Mercy General Hospital, equipped with the latest technology and staffed by researchers of your choosing. Additionally, an endowment has been established to ensure the continuation of this research in perpetuity. We ask nothing in return except that you continue your vital work. With admiration and respect. A friend. Camille read the email 3 times. Then she picked up her phone and called her mother. Did he do this? Lena's voice was careful. Did who do what? You know exactly what I am talking about. The anonymous donation. The research lab. This has Wesley written all over it. I do not know anything about it. Mom. A long pause. He may have mentioned something to me. About wanting to support your work without you feeling obligated. Camille was silent. Are you angry? Camille considered the question. She should be angry. This was exactly the kind of grand gesture she had specifically told him not to make. But something about it felt different. He had not put his name on it. He had not demanded recognition. He had not tried to use it as leverage. He had just helped. I do not know what I feel, Camille finally admitted. Maybe that is okay. Lena's voice was gentle. Maybe you do not have to know right now. Camille hung up the phone and stared out the window of her office. For the first time since she had saved Wesley Royce's life, she allowed herself to feel something other than anger. She allowed herself to feel hope. You have made it this far, which tells me you are invested in this family's journey. Take a second to hit the subscribe button if you have not already. Share this story with someone who needs to hear about forgiveness and second chances. And stay with me, because the real storm is coming. The next few weeks passed in a careful rhythm. Wesley attended his weekly visits with Camille. He answered her questions about his past. He shared memories of his own childhood, his complicated relationship with his father, the wounds that had shaped him into the man he became. He did not make excuses. He simply offered the truth and let her decide what to do with it. For her part, Camille remained guarded but gradually less hostile. She began to share small details about her life. Favorite books, funny stories from medical school, the satisfaction of a surgery well done. Lena watched from a careful distance, saying little but observing everything. And through it all, Wesley's health continued to decline. The complications from his surgery were worsening. The internal scarring was spreading. His doctors warned him that without another operation, he had months, not years. He told no one. The crisis came without warning. Camille was in the middle of her weekly department meeting when her phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Dr. Hayes, there has been an incident. The hospital's central computer system has been compromised. Patient records have been accessed. Camille's blood ran cold. Accessed how? We are not sure yet. But preliminary reports suggest that your research files have been specifically targeted. The room spun around her. Someone had hacked the hospital system. Someone had stolen her research. And if the breach became public, her career would be destroyed. She called Wesley before she could stop herself. He answered on the first ring. Camille, is everything all right? No. Her voice was shaking. Someone hacked the hospital. They stole my research files. If this gets out, I could lose everything. There was a brief pause. Then Wesley's voice came back, calm and steady. Listen to me carefully. Do not talk to anyone until I get there. Do not make any statements to the press. Do not sign anything. Wesley, I do not need you to. Camille. His voice was firm but gentle. Let me help. Please. She hesitated. Every instinct told her to refuse. To handle this on her own, the way she had handled everything her whole life. But something in his voice made her trust him. Okay, good. I will be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, already in motion. Wesley arrived at the hospital in a whirlwind of quiet efficiency. He did not bring lawyers. He did not bring press agents. He brought only himself, walking into the administrator's office with a presence that commanded immediate attention. The hospital's executives were gathered around a conference table, their faces pale with panic. Mr. Royce, the chief administrator, stood quickly. We did not expect. I am here for Dr. Hayes. Wesley's voice was calm. She is not to be blamed for this breach. Your system's security was inadequate, and that is your responsibility, not hers. Mr. Royce, with all due respect, the investigation is still ongoing. Then let me expedite it. Wesley sat down at the table, uninvited but entirely in control. I have contacted my personal cybersecurity team. They will trace the breach, identify the perpetrator, and recover the stolen data. In the meantime, I expect the hospital to release a statement confirming Dr. Hayes' innocence and supporting her continued work. The administrators exchanged nervous glances. Mr. Royce, we cannot simply. You can and you will. Wesley's eyes were cold. Unless you would prefer that my legal team investigate why your system was vulnerable in the first place. I suspect the board would not appreciate the liability exposure. Silence fell over the room. Finally, the chief administrator nodded. We will prepare a statement. Good. Wesley stood. And I expect a full security review, at your expense, before Dr. Hayes returns to her research. He walked out without waiting for a response. Camille was waiting in the hallway, her face drawn with worry. What happened? It is handled. Wesley's voice was gentle now, all the steel gone. You will not be blamed. Your research will continue. Camille stared at him. You did that? For me. Wesley met her eyes. I would do anything for you. The words hung between them, simple and honest. For the first time, Camille did not look away. That night, Camille went to see her mother. They sat on Lena's worn couch, cups of tea cooling on the table between them. He fixed it. Camille's voice was quiet. He walked in there like he owned the place and fixed everything. That sounds like Wesley. But he did not take credit. He did not use it to manipulate me. He just fixed it and walked away. Lena was silent for a long moment. What are you thinking? Camille asked. I am thinking that people are more complicated than we want them to be. Lena's voice was slow and careful. I spent 26 years building a story about who Wesley was. And that story was true. But maybe it was not the whole truth. What do you mean? I mean that people can be monsters and still have the capacity for love. I mean that someone can fail you completely and still want to do better. I mean that maybe, just maybe, your father is trying to become someone new. Camille felt tears prick her eyes. Do you think he can? Lena reached over and took her daughter's hand. I think that is for you to decide. 3 weeks had passed since the hospital incident. Wesley's health had deteriorated significantly. The internal complications were spreading faster than his doctors had predicted. He spent most days in his penthouse, attended by nurses and therapists, watching the city through floor-to-ceiling windows that suddenly felt like prison bars. He had built this empire to feel powerful. Now he felt trapped by it. The physical therapy sessions were brutal. Every movement sent fire through his abdomen. Every breath reminded him of how fragile his body had become. The man who had once commanded boardrooms and intimidated rivals now struggled to walk across his living room without assistance. His therapist, a patient woman named Grace, worked with him 3 times a week. She never commented on his wealth or his fame. She simply focused on helping him move, one painful step at a time. It was during one of these sessions that Lena came to visit. Wesley was in the middle of a stretching exercise when the elevator doors opened and she stepped into the penthouse. She was wearing a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back in a low bun. She looked tired but composed. Grace immediately stopped the session. Should I give you some privacy? Wesley nodded, his chest heaving with exertion. Thank you, Grace. We will continue tomorrow. Grace gathered her things and left quietly. Lena stood by the windows, looking out at the city below. She did not speak for a long moment. You look worse than last time. Wesley laughed weakly. Thank you for the honesty. Lena turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held something he had not seen in years. Concern. How bad is it really? Wesley hesitated. He had been hiding the true extent of his condition from everyone. His board of directors thought he was recovering well. His business partners believed he would be back in the office within months. Even Camille, despite her medical expertise, did not know the full picture. But looking at Lena now, he found he could not lie. Bad. His voice was quiet. The scarring is spreading. My organs are failing, slowly but consistently. The doctors say another surgery might buy me more time, but the risks are significant. How significant? 50% chance I do not survive the operation. Lena's face went pale. Wesley. He held up a hand. I have made my peace with it. If the surgery fails, at least I tried. And if it succeeds, I have more time to spend with Camille. Either way, it is better than sitting here, watching my body shut down. Lena walked slowly across the room and sat down on the couch across from him. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. Why did you not tell us? Because it is not your burden to carry. Wesley met her eyes. I put enough weight on your shoulders when we were married. I did not want to do it again. Lena shook her head slowly. You are impossible. I know. They sat in silence for a moment. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished floors. When Lena spoke again, her voice was softer. Do you remember our wedding day? Wesley blinked, surprised by the question. Of course. What do you remember most? He thought for a moment. Your dress. It was simple. Not the elaborate gown your mother wanted. Just clean white silk. You said you wanted to feel like yourself, not a princess in a fairy tale. Lena nodded slowly. You remembered. I remember everything about that day. Wesley's voice was thick. I remember thinking that I did not deserve you. That somehow, I had fooled this incredible woman into marrying me, and I needed to spend the rest of my life proving I was worthy. What happened to that man? He got lost. Wesley looked down at his hands. He got so focused on building and conquering that he forgot what he was building for. He forgot that the whole point was to create a life worth living, not just a business worth admiring. Lena was silent. I have been thinking about it a lot, lying here. Wesley continued. All the choices I made. All the times I put work before you. Before us. I told myself I was doing it for our future. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of what? Scared of being vulnerable. Scared of needing someone. Scared of loving someone so much that losing them would destroy me. So you pushed me away instead. Yes. Wesley's voice cracked. And in doing so, I lost you anyway. The exact thing I was trying to prevent. Lena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She did not speak. The accident changed something in me. Wesley said quietly. When I was lying in that wreckage, bleeding and broken, I did not think about my company. I did not think about my legacy or my net worth. I thought about you. About the life we could have had. About the family I threw away. Wesley, I know it is too late. I know I cannot undo the past. But I need you to know that I am sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. Not because I am dying, and not because I want something from you. Just because you deserved better, and I failed to give it to you. Lena stood abruptly and walked to the window. Her back was to him, her shoulders rigid. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lena turned around. Tears were streaming down her face. I spent 26 years hating you. Her voice was barely a whisper. I built my entire identity around being the woman who escaped Wesley Royce. Every success, every achievement, every moment of happiness was proof that I did not need you. That I was better off alone. Wesley nodded slowly. I understand. But lately, Lena's voice wavered. Lately I have been wondering if all that hate was just another form of love. If maybe I never stopped caring about you. I just buried it so deep that I convinced myself it was gone. Wesley felt his heart constrict. Lena. She held up a hand. I am not saying I forgive you. I am not saying I want to try again. But I am saying that watching you with Camille, seeing you actually try to change, it has made me question everything I thought I knew. What do you mean? I mean that maybe people can grow. Lena's eyes met his. Maybe the man I married is still in there somewhere, buried under decades of armor. And maybe, just maybe, he is finally ready to come out. Wesley stood slowly, painfully, and walked toward her. Every step sent fire through his body, but he did not stop. He stood before her, close enough to touch, but not touching. His eyes were bright with tears. I do not deserve your forgiveness, he said quietly, but I am going to spend whatever time I have left earning it. Not for me. For you. For Camille. For the family we should have been. Lena looked up at him. Her face was wet, her makeup ruined, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered. Then she did something Wesley never expected. She reached out and took his hand. One day at a time. She whispered, that is all I can promise. Wesley squeezed her hand gently. One day at a time. If this moment between Wesley and Lena moved you, take a second to hit that like button. Your engagement helps more people find this story of redemption and second chances. The weeks that followed were unlike any Wesley had experienced. He stopped working entirely. For the first time in 40 years, he handed full control of Royce Technologies to his board of directors and stepped away from the company he had built. The decision should have felt like defeat. Instead, it felt like freedom. He spent his days differently now. Mornings were devoted to physical therapy, slowly rebuilding his strength for the surgery ahead. Afternoons were spent reading, something he had not done for pleasure in decades. Evenings were reserved for family. Family. The word still felt foreign on his tongue, but it was becoming more real every day. Camille visited twice a week now, sometimes more. Their conversations had evolved from careful, clinical exchanges to something warmer. She told him about her patients, her research, her frustrations with hospital bureaucracy. He listened without offering solutions, learning to simply be present instead of always trying to fix things. Lena came too, though less frequently. She was cautious, keeping her distance while allowing small moments of connection. A shared cup of coffee, a brief conversation about Camille's childhood, a tentative smile when Wesley said something unexpectedly thoughtful. It was not reconciliation. Not yet. But it was something. A foundation being laid, brick by careful brick. The surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday in early November. Wesley spent the night before with both of them. They gathered in his penthouse, an unlikely family reunion in a place that had always felt too large and too empty. Lena brought food from a restaurant they used to love, back when they were young and poor and impossibly in love. Camille brought a bottle of wine and a deck of cards. They ate together at the massive dining table that had never hosted a family meal. They played cards and told stories and laughed at things that were not particularly funny, but felt hilarious in the moment. For a few hours, they were not a billionaire and his ex-wife and the daughter he had abandoned. They were just three people who loved each other, trying to make up for lost time. Near midnight, the conversation grew quiet. Camille was the first to speak. "Are you scared?" Wesley considered the question. A month ago, he would have denied it. He had spent his entire life projecting strength, hiding any vulnerability that might be exploited. But he was done hiding. Terrified, he admitted, but not of dying. "I am terrified of leaving things unfinished, of running out of time before I have proven to you both that I have changed." Camille nodded slowly. "You have already proven it, Dad." The word hit Wesley like a lightning bolt. It was the first time she had called him that. The first time she had acknowledged him as her father. His eyes filled with tears. "Say that again." Camille smiled, her own eyes glistening. "Dad." Wesley reached across the table and took her hand. "Thank you. That is the greatest gift you could give me." Lena watched them with a complicated expression. Joy and sadness and something else, something that looked almost like hope. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said quietly, "I want you to know that I am glad you found us. Glad that Camille has a chance to know her father, even if it took 26 years. Wesley met her eyes. "I am going to survive this surgery, Lena. I have too much to live for now." She nodded slowly. "Then survive." The surgery began at 7 in the morning. Camille had wanted to be in the operating room, but the chief of surgery had refused. It was a conflict of interest, he said. Too personal. She would have to wait like everyone else. So she waited. Lena sat beside her in the surgical waiting room, a space that felt far too familiar to both of them. They held hands without speaking, watching the clock tick away the minutes. The surgery was supposed to take 4 hours. At the 6-hour mark, a nurse came out to update them. There were complications. The nurse's voice was carefully neutral. The scarring was more extensive than the scans showed. "Dr. Patterson is doing everything he can." Camille felt the blood drain from her face. "What kind of complications?" "Internal bleeding. The surgical team is working to control it now." Lena's hand tightened around Camille's. "How much longer?" "We do not know," the nurse said honestly. "I will update you as soon as I can." She disappeared back through the surgical doors, leaving them alone with their fear. The waiting was unbearable. Camille paced the room, her surgeon's mind cycling through every possible scenario. Internal bleeding during abdominal surgery could mean a dozen different things, most of them bad. If the surgical team could not control it, if the damage was too extensive, if his heart could not take the strain. She forced herself to stop thinking. It did not help. Lena sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the doors. Her face was blank, but her hands were shaking. "He cannot die." Camille's voice was barely a whisper. "Not now. Not when we just found each other." Lena looked up at her daughter. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. "Your father is the most stubborn man I have ever known," she said quietly. "If anyone can survive this, it is him." "You really believe that?" Lena hesitated. "I believe that he has something to live for now, and that makes all the difference." 8 hours after the surgery began, the doors finally opened. Dr. Patterson emerged, his surgical mask pulled down around his neck. His face was exhausted but calm. Camille stood immediately. "How is he?" "He is stable." Patterson said. The surgery was successful, but there were significant complications. We had to remove more damaged tissue than anticipated, and there was a moment when we thought we might lose him. But he pulled through. Lena let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. He is going to be okay. He is going to need a long recovery. Patterson cautioned. Months of rehabilitation. His body has been through tremendous trauma. But if he follows the recovery plan carefully, there is every reason to believe he will have several more years. Several more years. Camille felt tears streaming down her face. Can we see him? Patterson nodded. He is in recovery now, but you can see him briefly. He asked for both of you. Wesley looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. Tubes and wires connected him to a dozen machines. His face was pale, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow but steady. The monitors beeped in reassuring rhythm. Camille approached the bed slowly, her surgeon's eye assessing even as her daughter's heart ached. Dad, she whispered. Wesley's eyes fluttered open. He smiled weakly. I told you I would survive. Lena appeared at Camille's shoulder. You look terrible. Wesley laughed, then winced at the pain. Still honest as ever. He reached out his hand, and Camille took it. Then he reached out his other hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Lena took that one too. They stood like that for a long moment, connected for the first time as a family. I have a lot of time to make up for. Wesley's voice was weak but determined, and I intend to use every minute. Recovery was slow and grueling. Wesley spent 3 weeks in the hospital before being transferred to a rehabilitation facility. The doctors had been clear that his body needed extensive time to heal, and pushing too hard too fast could undo all the progress the surgery had achieved. For a man who had spent his life running at full speed, the enforced stillness was torture. But Wesley was learning to be patient. For the first time in his life, he had something worth waiting for. Camille visited every day after her shifts. Sometimes they talked about his recovery, her adjusting his medication or evaluating his progress with professional precision. Other times they just talked, filling in the gaps of 25 lost years. She told him about her childhood, the small apartment she and Lena had shared, the public schools where she had excelled despite limited resources, the teachers who had recognized her potential and pushed her to apply to competitive universities. She told him about medical school, the grueling hours, the impossible exams, the moments of doubt when she wondered if she had made the right choice, the first patient she saved, the first patient she lost. She told him about the anger she had carried for years, the resentment toward the faceless father who had abandoned her, the fantasies of confrontation, of telling him exactly what she thought of him. I imagined meeting you so many times, she admitted one evening. In my head, it was always a showdown. I would tell you everything you had missed, everything you had cost us, and you would have nothing to say. What changed? Camille was quiet for a moment. You did. When I saw you in that hospital bed, broken and vulnerable, asking about my scar, I expected the monster from my imagination. But you were just a man. A damaged, complicated man who had made terrible choices but seemed genuinely sorry for them. I am sorry, Wesley said quietly. For all of it. I know. Camille met his eyes. And that is what changed. Knowing that you actually meant it. Wesley's relationship with Lena evolved more slowly. She visited less frequently than Camille, maintaining a careful distance that Wesley understood and respected. The wounds between them were deeper, older, more complex. They could not be healed with a few conversations and a near-death experience. But gradually, the ice began to thaw. They started with safe topics. Camille's achievements, Wesley's recovery progress, the weather, the news, anything that did not venture into dangerous emotional territory. Then, one afternoon, Lena arrived with a box of old photographs. I found these in the attic, she said, setting the box on Wesley's bedside table. I thought you might want to see them. Wesley opened the box with trembling hands. The photos spanned decades. Camille as a baby, tiny and wrinkled and perfect. Camille as a toddler, taking her first steps. Camille in kindergarten, missing 2 front teeth and grinning at the camera. Camille at every stage of growth, every milestone Wesley had missed. He looked through them slowly, tears streaming down his face. She was beautiful, he whispered. She is beautiful. She looks like you, Lena said quietly. The eyes, the stubbornness, the way she tilts her head when she is thinking hard about something. Wesley looked up at her. Why did you bring these? Lena hesitated. Because you missed all of it. And you cannot get that time back, but you can at least know what happened. You can at least see who she became. Wesley nodded slowly. Thank you. Lena sat down in the chair beside his bed. She did not speak for a long moment. Then she asked a question that surprised them both. Do you remember the night I left? Wesley closed his eyes. Every detail. Tell me what you remember. I remember coming home late from a board meeting. I remember the apartment was dark, which was unusual because you always left a light on. I remember walking into the bedroom and seeing the empty closet. I remember standing there for an hour, trying to understand what had happened. That is all. Wesley opened his eyes. What do you mean? I mean the fight. Lena's voice was sharp. The night before I left. Do you remember what you said to me? Wesley was silent. He remembered the fight. He had spent 26 years trying to forget it. You said that children would ruin everything. Lena continued. You said that your company was your legacy, and that a family would only distract you from building it. You said that if I wanted children, I should find someone else to have them with. Wesley flinched. I was wrong. You were cruel. Lena's eyes were blazing now. I had spent years waiting for you to be ready. Years convincing myself that you would come around, that eventually you would want what I wanted. And in that one conversation, you destroyed everything. I know. Do you? Lena leaned forward. Do you understand that I went home that night and cried until I could not breathe? That I looked at the pregnancy test I had been saving to show you and realized I could never tell you? That I made the decision to leave because I could not bear the thought of my child being raised by someone who saw them as an obstacle? Wesley could not speak. The weight of her words pressed down on him, crushing. I was 3 weeks pregnant when I left. Lena's voice cracked. I gave up everything, Wesley. My home, my life, the future I had imagined. Because you made me believe that my child would never be wanted by their father. I am so sorry. Wesley's voice was barely audible. Lena, I am so sorry. Sorry does not give me back 26 years. Sorry does not erase the nights I worked double shifts while pregnant because I had no other choice. Sorry does not heal the wounds of raising a child alone while you built your empire. I know. Lena stood abruptly, her composure finally breaking. Tears streamed down her face, her body shaking with decades of suppressed grief. I need you to understand something, Wesley. I did not keep Camille from you out of cruelty. I kept her from you because I believed you would hurt her the way you hurt me. I believed that your ambition would poison her the way it poisoned our marriage. I made a choice to protect my daughter from a man I thought was incapable of love. Wesley reached out his hand. His own face was wet with tears. And were you wrong? Lena looked at him for a long moment. Her expression shifted, the anger slowly giving way to something softer. Something that looked almost like acceptance. I do not know yet, she finally said. But for the first time in 26 years, I am willing to find out. This is the turning point in their story. If you are feeling the emotional weight of this moment, let me know in the comments. And do not forget to subscribe if you want to see how this family finds their way back to each other. 1 year later, the rehabilitation center had discharged Wesley 8 months ago. He had moved into a smaller apartment, trading his massive penthouse for a modest 3-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood. The building had no doorman, no private elevator, no trappings of extreme wealth. Just normal neighbors and a pleasant courtyard where he liked to sit in the afternoons. He had sold Royce Technologies. The decision had shocked the business world. Headlines speculated about his health, his mental state, his legacy. Former colleagues called, alternating between concern and barely concealed greed, wondering if they could acquire pieces of his empire. Wesley ignored them all. The money from the sale was more than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. He established trusts for Camille and Lena, though he knew neither of them wanted or needed his wealth. He funded medical research programs at a dozen hospitals. He created scholarships for students from underprivileged backgrounds who wanted to pursue medicine. And then he stepped back and let the money do its work without his name attached. He was done with legacies built on buildings and balance sheets. He wanted a different kind of legacy now. Camille's research laboratory had opened 3 months ago. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was a small affair, just hospital staff and a few journalists. Camille had insisted on keeping it low-key, refusing the kind of extravagant launch that her father's money could have bought. Wesley attended as a guest, not a benefactor. He sat in the back row, watching his daughter speak about her vision for the facility, the lives they would save, the innovations they would pioneer. Lena sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She is remarkable, Wesley whispered. Lena smiled. She gets it from me. Wesley laughed softly. I do not doubt that. After the ceremony, Camille found them in the courtyard. She was radiant in her white coat, her eyes bright with excitement and purpose. So what did you think? I think you are going to change the world. Wesley said simply. Camille hugged him. It was still a gesture that surprised him every time. The casual intimacy of a daughter embracing her father. He had not earned it, but she gave it freely anyway. Thank you, Dad. For everything. Wesley shook his head. I did not do anything. This is all you. Camille pulled back and looked at him with the same piercing gaze she used to assess patience. You gave me a chance to know you. That is not nothing. The family dinners had become a regular tradition. Every Sunday evening, the three of them gathered at Lena's apartment for a meal. Sometimes Camille cooked, experimenting with recipes she found online. Sometimes Lena prepared the southern comfort food of her childhood. Sometimes they ordered takeout and spent the evening playing cards or watching old movies. It was ordinary, domestic, utterly unlike anything Wesley had ever experienced. He loved every minute of it. On one such Sunday, 6 months after his surgery, Wesley arrived early. Lena was alone in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove that smelled incredible. She looked up when he entered. You are early. I was restless, Wesley admitted. The apartment feels too quiet sometimes. Lena smiled knowingly. That is what happens when you spend 40 years working 80-hour weeks. You do not know what to do with yourself when you stop. I am learning. Wesley leaned against the counter, watching her work. You look happy. Lena considered this. I am. Happier than I have been in a long time. Because of Camille. Because of a lot of things. Lena set down her spoon and turned to face him. Camille is thriving. My work is fulfilling. And I have made peace with the past. Or at least, I am making peace with it. Wesley nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret leaving? Lena was quiet for a moment. The question hung between them, heavy with decades of pain and what-ifs. Sometimes, she finally said, not because I think I made the wrong choice, but because I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed. If I had fought harder. If I had insisted on therapy, on counseling, on finding a way to reach you. You would have destroyed yourself trying. Wesley said quietly. I was not ready to be reached. I know. Lena met his eyes. But sometimes I wonder if there was a version of our story where we both grew together instead of apart. Wesley stepped closer to her. There can still be a version of our story where we grow together. It is just starting later than we planned. Lena looked at him, her expression unreadable. What are you saying? I am saying that I love you. Wesley's voice was steady. I never stopped loving you. Even when I was too broken to show it. Even when I pushed you away, some part of me always knew that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Wesley, I am not asking for anything. He continued quickly. I am not trying to recreate what we had. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens from here, whatever kind of relationship we build, I needed you to know that my feelings never changed. I was just too stupid and scared to act on them. Lena reached up and touched his face. Her hand was warm against his cheek. You really have changed. I am trying to. She smiled through her tears. Then keep trying. Camille arrived an hour later, carrying a bottle of wine and a story about a difficult surgery that had ultimately been successful. She stopped in the doorway, looking at her parents standing side by side at the counter, closer than she had ever seen them. Did something happen? Wesley and Lena exchanged a look. Nothing dramatic. Lena said carefully. We were just talking. Camille raised an eyebrow. Just talking. With that look on your faces. What look? Wesley asked innocently. The look of two people who have finally figured something out. Camille set down the wine and crossed her arms. Do I need to have the talk with you too? Lena laughed, the sound bright and unexpected. The talk? About what? About taking things slow, being careful with each other, not rushing into anything just because there is a lot of lost time to make up for. Wesley felt a warmth spread through his chest. His daughter, the child he had never known, was giving him relationship advice. The irony was not lost on him. I promise we will take things slow, he said solemnly. Good. Camille picked up the wine bottle. Now, is someone going to open this, or do I have to do everything myself? The months that followed were the happiest of Wesley's life. His health stabilized, then improved. The surgery had given him time, and he was determined to use every moment of it wisely. He walked every day, building his strength. He read voraciously, catching up on decades of books he had been too busy to enjoy. He learned to cook, badly at first, but improving with practice. And he spent time with his family. Camille called him every few days, sometimes with updates about her work, sometimes just to chat. She had started calling him Dad consistently now, the word no longer carrying the weight of irony or hesitation. It was just a name for who he was to her. Lena remained cautious, but her walls were coming down. They went on dates, tentative at first, then more confident. Dinners at quiet restaurants. Walks in the park. Movie nights at his apartment, sitting close on the couch like teenagers. They did not remarry. They did not move in together. But they built something new, something that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. It was not the life Wesley had planned, but it was infinitely better. 1 year to the day after his surgery, Wesley stood in front of a mirror in his apartment, adjusting his tie. He looked older than he remembered. The past 2 years had carved lines into his face, stolen color from his hair, left marks that would never fade. But his eyes were different. Softer. More alive. He looked like a man who had finally found what he was looking for. There was a knock at the door. "Are you ready?" Camille's voice called from the hallway. Wesley took a deep breath and opened the door. Camille stood in the hallway, stunning in a formal dress. Her research team was receiving a major award tonight, recognition for the groundbreaking work they had done over the past year. Wesley had been invited as a guest of honor, not as a donor, not as a benefactor, as her father. "You look beautiful," he said. Camille smiled. "You look nervous." "I am nervous," Wesley admitted. "I have never been good at these things." "At what things?" "At just being present. At showing up without an agenda, without a deal to close, without something to prove." Camille linked her arm through his. "Well, Dad, here is the thing. You do not have to prove anything tonight. You just have to be proud of me. I am always proud of you. Then you are already doing great." The awards ceremony was held at a grand hotel downtown. The ballroom was filled with doctors, researchers, hospital administrators, and various dignitaries. Camille's team had made significant advances in surgical techniques, and the medical community had taken notice. Wesley sat at a table near the front, Lena beside him. They watched as Camille took the stage to accept the award on behalf of her team. She spoke about the importance of innovation, the lives they had saved, the lives they would continue to save. She spoke about the support of her colleagues, her hospital, her family. And then she looked directly at Wesley. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who is not a doctor or a researcher, but who played a crucial role in making this laboratory possible. Someone who showed me that it is never too late to change, never too late to heal, never too late to become the person you were meant to be." Wesley felt tears threatening to fall. "A year ago, I saved my father's life. I didn't know at the time that he was my father. But I did not know that the surgery I performed would lead to the most significant transformation I have ever witnessed. Not in a patient, but in a person." Camille's eyes were bright with emotion. "My father spent most of his life building an empire. He accumulated wealth and power that most people can only dream of. But he will tell you now that none of it mattered. What mattered was finding his way back to the family he had lost. What mattered was learning to be present, to be vulnerable, to be human." She raised her award. "This is for everyone who believed in our work. But it is also for my father, Wesley Royce, who taught me that redemption is always possible if you are willing to do the hard work of earning it." The room erupted in applause. Wesley did not hear any of it. He was too busy crying, too busy feeling the weight of his daughter's words settle into his heart. Lena reached over and took his hand. She was crying too. "You earned this," she whispered. "Every bit of it." After the ceremony, the three of them stood together on the hotel balcony, looking out at the city lights. The night was cool and clear. Stars were visible above the urban glow, faint but present. Wesley stood between the two women who had given him a second chance at life. His daughter on one side, his first love on the other. "I have something to tell you both," he said quietly. Camille and Lena looked at him with identical expressions of concern. "What is it?" Camille asked. "My latest tests came back." Wesley paused, letting the moment stretch. "The scarring has stopped spreading. My organs are functioning normally. The doctors say that if I continue the current treatment plan, I could have another 20 years. Lena's hand flew to her mouth. "Wesley." Camille's face broke into a brilliant smile. 20 years. Maybe more. Wesley felt a smile spreading across his own face. Apparently stubbornness is good for recovery. Lena laughed through her tears and threw her arms around him. 20 more years to drive us crazy. At least. Wesley hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I intend to make the most of every one of them." Camille joined the embrace, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Well, you better. I have a lot of father-daughter dances to make up for." Wesley held them both, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. He thought about the man he had been a year ago. Cold, lonely, so focused on building his empire that he had forgotten what really mattered. That man had died on an operating table, brought back to life by a daughter he never knew he had. The man who had risen from that table was different, softer, more present, capable of love in ways he had never imagined. He was not perfect. He would never be perfect. But he was trying, every single day, to be worthy of the second chance he had been given. And that, he realized, was enough. 5 years later, Wesley Royce sat in his garden, watching the afternoon sun paint golden stripes across the grass. The house was small by his former standards, a modest 4-bedroom in a quiet suburb, but it felt more like home than any penthouse ever had. Lena was inside, preparing lunch. They had remarried 2 years ago, a small ceremony with only Camille and a few close friends as witnesses. No press, no fanfare, just two people who had found their way back to each other against all odds. Camille was coming over later with her husband, a fellow surgeon she had met through her research program. They were expecting their first child in 4 months. Wesley had already filled the spare room with baby furniture, despite Lena's protests that they were being too eager. He could not help it. He had missed so much of Camille's childhood. He was determined not to miss a moment of his grandchild's life. The back door opened, and Lena stepped out carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, handing him a glass. Wesley smiled, just thinking about how much has changed. Good changes. The best changes. He took a sip of the lemonade. "Did I ever tell you what went through my mind when I was preparing for surgery?" Lena sat down beside him. "No. I thought about you. About the life we could have had. About all the choices I would make differently if I had another chance. And now I try to make those different choices every day." Wesley reached over and took her hand. "I am not the man I was, Lena. I will never be that man again." Lena squeezed his hand. "I know. That is why I am still here." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the shadows lengthen across the garden. Camille would arrive soon. There would be laughter and conversation and the warm chaos of family. There would be arguments about baby names and debates about parenting philosophies and all the beautiful mundane moments that made up a life. Wesley had spent 40 years building an empire that would crumble and fade. Now he was building something else, something that would last. A family, a legacy of love. And all it had taken was almost losing everything to realize what truly mattered. This story began with a crash that nearly took a man's life. It ends with a family rebuilt from the ashes of the past. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of redemption. Like and subscribe to this channel for more stories that remind us of what truly matters in life. Some of us are still in the beginning of our journeys, still making the mistakes that Wesley made. Let this be a reminder that it is never too late to change. It is never too late to choose love over legacy, family over fortune, presence over power. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. Your time means more than you know. Until next time.